Is happening, people? It is Brian, Alsruhe, and I have another video today as part of the Do or Do Not series. And today we're going to cover the Glute Ham Raise, or the Glute Ham Developer. Now, the reason why we're going to cover this, because this is an exercise that a lot of people know they should be doing, but they don't really know why or really how to do it. And I myself am in that same category. I really thought that I was doing this correctly for years. However, recently, probably in about the last year and a half, I've been able to work with some really advanced individuals who showed me some pointers on it that absolutely changed it for me, so I thought I would pass along that knowledge to you. Now, if you have not already started to implement the Glute Ham Raise into your programming, then you're missing out on a lot of strength as well as performance. It is often considered the lower body pull-up. It is the only hamstring exercise that I know of that works the muscle through the entire range of motion. And many people, some of the best powerlifters, strongman, everyone in the strength community, so many people would consider this the #1 assistance exercise for their lower body, both squats and deadlifts. So with all of that said, I really should not have to sell this to you anymore. What I'm going to do in this video is give you 10 bullet points, just quick rapid fire, to give you ideas of things you should be doing and you should not be doing on the Glute Ham Raise if you want to get the most results possible. And as always, there are timestamps below just in case you need to use this for reference. So the very first thing that I think you should be doing on the Glute Ham Raise is, instead of having your knees up on top of that pad supporting your body weight, I think you should slide them slightly back so that they are just a little bit behind the pad. And again, this mistake that I've been making for years, so do not feel bad if you were doing the exact same thing, but this is a better way to actually use your hamstrings, and it's not gonna make your knees hurt quite so badly. A pretty good rule of thumb is that if you come all the way to the up position on a Glute Ham Raise, then you should actually be slipping through the pad just slightly. If that is where you're at, then you're probably in a good spot. And the second thing that I think you should be doing on the Glute Ham Raise is to be driving your toes or the ball of your foot into the foot plate of the actual machine. Now, pushing the ball of your foot or your toes into that foot plate is going to do a lot to take your calves out of the movement, because after all, you are trying to strictly develop your glute and your hamstrings. From time to time, I've heard coaches talk about driving their heels into that foot plate, but that is not something that I've really experienced in using my hamstrings. So maybe they're talking about something different, but in my personal opinion, driving your toes into that foot plate is the foot position that you're gonna be wanting to look for. Now, as far as your body position goes, I wanna see that staying pretty close to parallel to the ground. In the past, myself, I've been guilty of dropping way past that and then swinging up. But guys, in reality, there I was using a lot of momentum on my lower back. To do that, I wasn't really isolating my glute and my hamstrings, which again, that's the entire point. Ideally in this movement, your shoulders will stay lined up with your hips for the entirety of the motion. Another common problem that you will often see on this is that people will want to push their butt back first when they initiate the movement back up. And that is actually gonna shorten the range of motion, which is actually taking out all the benefit like I talked about earlier. That is the reason why the Glute Ham Raise is so great, is because of its range of motion. So if you're doing that, not only are you taking a lot of your hamstrings out of it, but then number two, you're kind of wasting your time. So if you're new to this movement, or maybe it's just your first time trying it with some of these new cues, the easiest way that I would say is that get set up so that your knees, again, are slightly behind the pad. Now, to get yourself out to that parallel to the ground position, what I want you to do is extend your knees. As your knees start extending, I just want you to start flexing your butt so you can support your body as it kind of suspends. But the last thing that I want you to do is cue falling forward or thinking like doing a belly flop into a pool. That is not the motion that you were trying to do. Instead, you're trying to extend your knees. That is going to start firing your hamstrings in this motion. So I personally most closely relate this to the squat, because for me, when I go to the squat, I don't break at the hips first. I push my knees out, which starts the descent, and eventually my knees break when they want to. I do the exact same thing here. I start to extend my knees, and then that is what starts to drop me forward. I am at no time in my head thinking, just let it go and flop. The cues or the directions that you tell yourself in your mind can so greatly change how your body performs, it's not even funny. So do not take those types of things lightly. Fifth thing I think you should be doing on the Glute Ham Raise is initiating the movement out of the bottom with nothing but your toes. I literally want you to think about driving your toes or the ball of your foot into that foot plate as hard as possible. That is going to kick off initiating your hamstrings and make you use them throughout the entire motion. If you are trying to pull your heels into the pads, then there would be no reason to have a foot plate in the first place. It is there to drive the ball of your foot or your toes into it. Make sure you're doing that to initiate the movement, and it is completely different. However, while you're doing that, make sure that your toes do not start to flail outward. Now, if you do find your toes flaring out, much like I often do, it shows a weakness in your hamstrings, and all that your body is trying to do is recruit your calves as well as your lower back. and do that to get the motion done instead of your glutes and your hamstrings. I know in the past I've heard Dave Tate talk about stretching his calves between his sets just so that they stay less used in the glute hamstring. Whether that works for you or not is up to you whether you want to try it. I always forget to. So before you go thinking that these are way too easy, first I'd rather see you pointing your toes either straight forward or even slightly in when you are doing your glute ham raises, and I think you will find that will be a drastically different experience. However, I do know there are some of you monsters out there that this is still going to be too easy even with your toes pointed slightly in. I know you're going to want to immediately go grab a plate and hug it to your chest or throw a band around your neck, but to be honest with you, when you do that, oftentimes you start recruiting more of your lower back or your calves than your hamstrings and your glutes. So instead, what I'd rather see you do is just elevate the rear side of the glute ham raise just slightly. Or if you have an adjustable pad on your glute ham raise, just drop the pad down a couple of those notches. If you do have to elevate the rear of your glute ham raise, just throw a couple bumper plates underneath of it, because a slight change in the height of that pad or the angle of that pad changes the leverages entirely, and that changes the exercise, and you will have your hamstrings are going to thank you very, very much for just a little tiny slight change. And that kind of brings us to the individuals who are not able to do a glute ham raise yet. So a scale version of this, one thing that you could potentially do is slide that foot plate forward a couple of those notches so your knees are a little bit higher on the pad. Now, I do not want you doing a full glute ham raise with your knees on top of the pad like that. It's not necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily gonna hurt you, but it's not gonna be much fun. But instead, what I'd rather see you do is go ahead all the way into the bottom position, like you are trying to stretch your hamstrings there into a full upside down L position. Now, once you're there, I essentially want you to perform a good morning. So in a good morning, you do not bend over, you push your butt back. But however, since you're inverted here, I would tell you to push your butt up towards the ceiling. Now, make sure that your abs are good and braced. You have a good breath of air, the same exact way that you would on a deadlift or a squat or anything, and then simply extend your body upward. Now, don't go past parallel, just kind of stay at parallel, and I would hold that for a count or two, really focusing on your glute and your hamstrings, really just trying to stay that contraction, trying to hold your body out there suspended. And if those are a little bit too easy or non-stimulating, you can always throw a band around your back or your neck or in your mouth like a horse bit, and then you can do them like that. Now, of course, you want to start with heavier bands so you get more help, and then break down lower bands, lower band, lower band, until eventually you can do these with nothing more than your body weight. Which brings us to number 10, do or do not, which is treat the glute ham raise the exact same way that you would a pull-up. A lot of people want to know how to program these in, where to use them. Guys, they're just an assistance exercise, but again, much like I said at the beginning, a lot of people consider these the pull-up of the lower body, and I look at it the exact same way. I would not be throwing them in the night before your deadlift day, or maybe even 2 days before your deadlift day. Before squat day, you're probably okay. It probably wouldn't make that big of a deal. But other than staying away from pretty much the 24 to 48 hours prior to a hard deadlift workout, I would throw them in like crazy. You can kind of go nuts with these as long as you are doing them correctly. And trust me, if you're doing them correctly, you cannot do a ton of reps of them. I used to think that I could. I thought I could just slam these things out there with no problem. And then I started doing them correctly, and then I found out how my hamstrings actually work poorly. But guys, that is it for today. Those are 10 do and do nots for the glute ham raise. If you guys like this type of format, kind of quick, rapid, come at you, a lot of information in a short amount of time, then please let me know in the comment section down below if there is one exercise that you would ever want me to cover for this. Please let me know in the comment section down below. If enough people vote for that exercise, I will absolutely cover that. And if you do not know which ones I've already done, there is a playlist which should be popping up here in a second. Also in the description down below, it will take care of that, all the timestamps. If you guys are looking for a program, you can find my email down there. If you're looking for t-shirts, the link to that company is over there. Whatever you guys want to do, thank you so much for absolutely everything you guys are doing. Banners just came out. They look like this. They're amazing. I thank you so much. I will catch up with you later in the week. Until I do go out to something amazing in your lives, keep working hard, people. Be nice to each other. Do your glute ham raises. All right, guys, so there's one more thing that I want to talk about, but I completely forgot about it. So you do need a friend to do this, or at least someone that you pay to be in your life, like I do. All you're going to do is do the glute ham raise, except you're going to do a heavy negative with some sort of medicine ball or plate. When you get to the bottom, you're going to drop it. They're going to hand you the next medicine ball, and you're going to keep going like that. So from here, if I start out, this up top, I have it. I'm going to slowly do a negative, drop down when I'm at the bottom. I'm going to drop it, explosively come back up. Hands to me. Drop slowly, drop it, explode, come back. Hands, back down, hands, go. And you just go back and forth. But you just go back and forth like that. It's absolutely brutal. Good way to finish your workout. I just released an entire video about this. if you're watching this on Instagram.
Give it the water. It's not even me.
Already? No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.